So with the release of Assassin's Creed Mirage, I decided to jump back into the Assassin's Creed franchise, the classic games, and give them a go. I've never been a huge Assassin's Creed guy. I've played Assassin's Creed 1 back on the 360 for maybe 2 hours. I have tried the likes of Black Flag. I also tried in the past Syndicate. I've given Unity a bit of a go, and then the likes of Origins and even the newer Assassin's Creed Odyssey I've tried. But all in total, you're talking maybe 10 hours gameplay across the entire series. So with Mirage coming out, I decided why not, let's try and give it a go. Let's see how do I get into the classic style Assassin's Creed, which is Mirage, what's actually Mirage is going for, supposedly. I don't think it's done actually too well in that regard. So I wanted to give it a bit of a go, and obviously going through kind of recommendations of which ones to play. The Ezio trilogy, which was Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations, was one that kept on coming up. Everyone kept recommending it. So I thought it was a good starting point. I then decided to try AC1, which, you know, it didn't hold up too well. I do have a video on the channel describing kind of my first impressions with AC1 and some starting impressions of AC2. But now I've kind of went through the trilogy. I've got my thoughts, and I kind of want to discuss them with you and just really see if it is worth playing in 2023. Does it hold up to the standard that we tend to set games at this day and age? So there's a multitude of ways you can play. So the Ezio Collection, which was released, I think it may have been back in 2016, came to that generation of consoles. So your PlayStation 4, it's actually on the Xbox as well as the Nintendo Switch. Decided to maybe give them a bit of a go there. They are 30 frames per second. They aren't very great. Now I believe the PS5 version, which is still just your PS4 Pro one, was 30 FPS, but it was 4K. But I decided to then go to PC. It's easier for capture, and there I was actually playing on 4K 60, and some of the games actually I think ran at the 120 frame rate. So what did I think? Obviously a lot of people, they think of this game as, you know, this trilogy was peak Assassin's Creed, the Ezio Collection, you hear it all the time. I was obviously a bit skeptical. The Ezio Collection, Assassin's Creed 2 released in 2009, 2010 was the release of Brotherhood, and then 11 was Revelations, which is the final kind of chapter in the trilogy. Basically, it starts off, if you haven't kind of got awareness on what it actually includes in terms of the Ezio trilogy, you start a guy called Ezio Auditore, and he is from Florence, and it's all about him coming to terms, basically becoming an assassin and following in his dad's footsteps. First off the bat, especially coming from Assassin's Creed 1, which was extremely dated, you know, Assassin's Creed 1, I actually really liked the storyline on that, but what started to happen was the gameplay loop wasn't set in stone just yet. So that gameplay loop was changed into somewhat and just had more of a kind of a modern structure to it. So if you think about games nowadays, you know, your open world games, lots of stuff to do on the map, go anywhere. The Assassin's Creed games, the classic ones are a bit different. They're kind of more semi-open world. You know, there is barriers around the world that you can't access because obviously it's through the animus, the sequences that you can't kind of go to just yet. So it is quite linear in that style of go anywhere, but in a certain section. It's not exactly like you know your Valhalla these days where people are saying there's too much to do. You get overwhelmed with the amount of kind of options. So I really actually like that style of gameplay. I think that's missing these days. I personally think of open world games and you have a map with so much to do. It is very overwhelming nowadays. I do kind of like the more simplified structure, and I would love to actually games to go back to that. Just giving you kind of a more of a smaller playground, opens up over time, and that way it kind of just doesn't throw you in at the deep end. But let's talk about Assassin's Creed 2. So does it actually hold up? Not really. I actually found it quite hard to play in the grand scheme of things. So when at the very start of the game, I did really start getting into it. Like I liked the story, I liked the historical aspect, but the more I played, the kind of, you know, it felt like a grind. There was, you know, very dated mission structure. It's not like missions these days where there's a lot more variety. It kind of got very repetitive in terms of what you were doing. And over time, obviously, it got really, really kind of repetitive and boring. You know, go here, kill this guy, you know, follow these people. There was these following missions, and, you know, if you lose a line of sight with them past 25 seconds, the mission's failing, you know. But overall, like in terms of that, if you're going to go back to Assassin's Creed 2, it's still a good time. I actually think for someone who's maybe not really played the franchise, I can see why people recommend Assassin's Creed 2. Ezio's a great character. He's very interesting, but there's definitely things to improve on. So obviously getting into the gameplay, Assassin's Creed 2, typical kind of gameplay is, you are an assassin, you have a hit list almost of people that you're going to kill and assassinate. What I would have liked to see was maybe more variety on how you assassinate. So thinking of a game like, Hitman these days and the amount of variety that you can approach a mission, that actually, I thought that would actually work quite well here. Obviously not to the degree that Hitman is, but having some variety on how to approach a mission or what ways to kind of take down an enemy, for example. The parkour actually in this game is something that I really got into. Like, I am a huge fan of the likes of Uncharted, even the Tomb Raiders, and just the climbing in those games. With the climbing and the parkour, I think this is actually where the game shined. And I know that's something that's missing in the later games, which is something that when I get to those games, I think I'm going to have a bit of problem with, because that is something that when you're just running around Florence, or you're running around Venice or all the areas in the game, that is something that is extremely fun. Just being able to kind of platform throughout the city and just kind of not chaining together as you will, but kind of just, running from guards and running on the rooftops and kind of just putting all those systems to use is something that, especially as the games get on throughout the trilogy, is something that's kind of widely improved. Graphic wise, I actually find that the graphics somewhat hold up, that I don't think they're too dated or anything like that. It is a game from the late 2000s, but the art style and things is very nice, especially on a PC. If you're playing this on a PC, 4K 60, honestly, it could probably compete with a lot of PS4 games of the day and age. But no, I really actually enjoyed the parkour side. The combat is something that, oh my god, the combat is extremely dated. So with the combat side of things, it's, when you're going on from games in the past, 10 years, we've got games now like Ghost of Tsushima, Sekiro, you've got, Batman kind of combat systems, which I know later games start to kind of incorporate some things with that with the B button, but on the Xbox. But with the combat, very simple. It's not really challenging, but it is something that, you do see typically improve through the games. So yeah, Assassin's Creed 2, I continued the game. I enjoyed it up until somewhat in Venice, and it's somewhere throughout that kind of playthrough, the story kind of slows a bit down, and it just gets a bit, tedious. What I actually really liked about the game though was the modern day segment, which is something that I remember back on the Assassin's Creed 1 as a kid not liking, which is funny enough, not maybe understanding it as much as I should, even though it's not that complicated. But with that kind of modern day segment and just finding out what's happening with Desmond, who's kind of the main character, who's thrust into this animus machine that he can obviously relive his ancestors' memories. That's something that I started kind of getting into, and to be fair, in the grand scheme of things, that is very, very minimal to the overall story. It's you're talking probably about an hour of cutscenes in most, an hour of gameplay. But throughout the story, obviously things unravel with Ezio's story. He's going up against this guy, the Spaniard, who obviously has murdered his parent, his brother, his dad, and it just kind of unravels from there. But overall, once I finish Assassin's Creed 2, I think it ends quite strongly in terms of giving a bit more of Desmond's storyline and how it kind of interweaves into Ezio's. And I was excited. I was definitely ready to move on to Brotherhood at this stage. And when I did move on to Brotherhood, right away, the improvements in 1 year was fucking incredible. So in 1 year, you've went from a game that's quite harsh and quite dated to a game that in 2023 holds up very well. You've kind of got those set pieces that I didn't expect, and it kind of reminded me of Uncharted 2. Going from Uncharted 1, not many set pieces. Obviously, there's some, bit dated, but then Uncharted 2, straight away, you're hanging off that train on the side of the mountain and you're climbing up it. So I thought, in terms of just how the Ezio Brotherhood, started, I thought it was a major jump up already. With the attack on the homeland, or whatever you want to call it, his homestead. I thought that was great. Setting up a villain as well. The villain, a lot of people disliked the villain. Then he was quite one note in that sense. Bit more of a kind of a caricature of a villain, but I thought it was all right. The problem that I ended up having with Brotherhood, if you played it in 2010 when it released, I think it would have been excellent. There's a lot to do here that isn't related to the main storyline. Now, due to time constraints, I wasn't necessarily going and doing a lot of the side content, but there is a lot here. There's actually a recruit and assassin kind of functionality built in that you can then recruit assassins to help you take on obviously enemies, and there's a whole system with there. What I do like with the whole old style Assassin's Creed is kind of just getting better weapons that, you know, levels your kind of level up your strength and your attack, but then your armor correlates to, you know, your health. That was nice seeing that, and obviously getting the money to do that. And it's not something that you really focus on, but just having the extra funds and doing that, it felt good to just upgrade over time and kind of getting those into the loop of using better armor and getting the upgrades rather than really having to focus on it, which I know in later games with the loot system, you know, that's something that's obviously very important there. With Brotherhood, there's a few things I started to annoy me. You know, when we talk back to, you know, Assassin's Creed 2 being quite semi-open world, this again was still semi-open world, but the areas were then branched out bigger, so then it required a bit more traveling. Now, the problem that I typically had was there was fast travel, and I think I'm spoilt in 2023, especially when I'm trying to get through the story as quick as possible. To get the travel points, you need to unlock them. To unlock them, you need to do your watchtowers. To do your watchtowers, sometimes you needed to do these like bonfires, and it was just this whole kind of rigmarole. I can imagine though playing this, if this was the only game that you were playing and really just kind of taking your time with it, that's where that game shines, because Brotherhood is one that people across the board were telling me it's the best one, it's the best one, it's fantastic. And it is good, and it's definitely a huge step up. Once again, no, story-wise started to get the slog, and I just started to lose interest. And honestly, with this is where I kind of started to cut corners and just watching recaps. Now, I must have made this game about 50 to 55% of the way through. When I watched the recap, I felt like, okay, that literally nothing much happened. There was a wee bit of story. Obviously, it was quite Ezio's story in this, just tying up loose ends. There's nothing major happening. And then obviously with the kind of Desmond story, does seem like greater things happen there. Parkour-wise on Assassin's Creed 2, seemed like another step up. I don't know if it just felt more quicker in terms of the traversal, but it definitely started to feel a bit more less janky, is probably the word I would look for. It all flowed nicely. It was very good in terms of how the traversal was. But the biggest step up is the combat. So a few factors here with the combat. In terms of the fluidity of the combat, much improved, but there was kind of a linking of combat chains. So for example, when you execute one person, that links on to the next person, so you can automatically execute them. So instead of being about, you know, a few guards you're taking on a lot more enemies, but through that, you're kind of linking up your kind of attacks, so on. And something I kind of didn't even mention about the games that I really do enjoy, I enjoy the historical aspect. Like, I think it's very fun kind of having all that information. You know, you're walking around real places. You know, Rome in Assassin's Creed 2 is somewhere I've actually been in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. And you're seeing the Spanish Steps, you're seeing, you know, the Colosseum, places that I've been, and you can read about them, and it's good. It's kind of, I feel like if I had this back when I was in school, you probably would have passed a lot of history lessons, put it that way. So Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, this day and age, if you're going to play it, I think it's a game that you take your time with, you use the systems, and you really get into it. I feel like it's a game that maybe I didn't utilize the right way, but definitely I can see why in 2010 people would have played this and thought, this game is incredible. Now, when I went to Assassin's Creed Revelations, I was in two minds. Do I just watch a recap and move on with the series, or do I really give it a go? So I decided to give it a go, and right away the production value once again did that step up, and this is where I kind of got really into it. So the first cutscene that you see, it's a CGI cutscene, but it's far above anything better than you've seen before. It's actually a lot similar to cutscenes you would imagine with the old World of Warcraft games in terms of the quality put into them, but it was a fantastic CGI cutscene, looked great, and then it obviously linked back to Altair's story in Assassin's Creed 1 in the areas that obviously he was in, and the whole thing there really got me at the start. I feel like these games at the very start, when they're being a bit more linear and structured, is where they shine. I think actually what happens is that when they start opening up, the monotony of kind of the side missions and the missions in general, the importance of them is kind of lacking, so then it loses the quality. Whereas once they're getting started is when I'm always sucked in, whether that was Assassin's Creed 2 or Brotherhood, or in this case Revelations. Revelations, massive step up. You know, few things I actually wanted to touch on. Assassin's Creed Revelations has a parachute, so when you're jumping off a building, or depending on the height, you can actually pull out a parachute. And only when I played this did I realize that is where Zelda got the idea, because I always would have remembered that from Breath of the Wild and thinking that was a unique idea to them when it wasn't. So props to Assassin's Creed Revelations, because they had done stuff way before anything like Breath of the Wild did, and was pretty acclaimed for that. So we've obviously got something like that in Revelations, which is pulled into other games, but also you can track enemies and you can see their walking patterns, which once again, if any of you played Horizon Forbidden West or Horizon in general, you'll remember that from following the machine. So once again, Assassin's Creed kind of set the precedent for that. So I don't feel like it gets enough kind of credit. Credit is due. Story wise though, Assassin's Creed 3's or Assassin's Creed Revelations is kind of following up obviously from Brotherhood, but it's like the tail end of Ezio's story and kind of links very well back into 1 and Altair's story. I don't want to go into too much detail with it. I'll be honest, I made it about halfway through again and had to watch a recap. It did get, once again, these games have a common theme with the monotony and having kind of so much to play that I'm not fully engaged once they start to open up. But what I will say, the gameplay here is phenomenal. The parkour starts to really shine. So with the parkour, you've gotten like a grapple hook almost, or a hook that allows you to jump and then almost boost yourself up. So this is where the parkour for me, I'm starting to get really, really into it. And obviously playing the future Assassin's Creed games, I played Unity. I can't remember any of that, but I know Unity has some fantastic parkour. But the parkour in this, hugely improved, a lot more streamlined, a lot more fun, and it just felt like your characters obviously go where you want. I feel like if I played this back in 2011, if I had played the trilogy then, the Revelations game would be the one that stands out most to me as something that I like the most. But I feel with the Ubisoft open world formula, that's kind of what actually loses me. I did notice though with the Ezio trilogy, especially in the third game, the bugs were getting prevalent, and it's quite funny because obviously knowing Ubisoft's like now, bugs are quite prevalent in most of their games, but with this, you started to see it a lot more, happening a lot more, and there was a lot more common throughout. There was a part where I was assassinating, or I was getting my assassins to assassinate while I was playing a loot and kind of trying to get people to pay attention to me while they were killing people in the background, and a guy was literally just walking around in circles just randomly. It was like the AI just messed up, and this was quite common when throughout my playthrough of the 5 hours that I probably spent with Revelations. And it is a short game, I probably should have just played it, but I do plan, like I said, they playing obviously more Assassin's Creed games. So does it honestly hold up to 2023 standards? I feel like certain aspects, especially like the Revelations, does. But if you are going back to play the Assassin's Creed, it honestly feels like we basically need a reboot of the classic style with more modern elements. Like, I would love nothing more than this style of game in terms of world size and kind of, you know, structure sense, in a sense, I guess. But more modern storytelling, better quest design, better overall side objectives, I guess, and just better platforming. So overall, I did enjoy the game. The burnout is real. Like, I am completely burned out on Assassin's Creed, especially this the older style. I actually did try and play 3 a bit, but I feel like I'm probably best going into the likes of Origins for now, and then kind of looping back around in the future. But no, they are good. They are good games. I can see obviously why a lot of people did enjoy them back in the day, and I probably did miss out because I feel like if I played these games back when they released, I'd probably be a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I'm interested with Unity because the parkouring is something that I obviously really enjoy. And it is the guys who made the Sands of Time games, the Prince of Persia games, which I was a huge fan of back in the day. But let's just hope, obviously, the Assassin's Creed can get back into this kind of style of gameplay. A bit more structured, a bit more of an assassin, as you will. I have tried Origins. From what I've tried of it, it seems quite open. It seems quite Ubisoft formula. I don't know how to hold up, but when I do play it, I will get impressions video. So if you did like the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Me and Bobby put regular content up every week on the channel. So if you are wanting kind of a gaming fix or just a bit of a topic and discussion about the latest games, we've got you covered.